Okay, so I went over the details in a different video of ideas or thoughts to have behind this private company auction. So I'm just going to go through and just do one real quick with not much thought, but just so you can see how it works. So starting with the first player here, he's going to look out at the options out here, and this person's going to say that they are interested in the Chesapeake and Ohio company. This person is going to say they're interested in the Baltimore and Ohio, getting the share. This person here is going to say, you know what, I'm interested in getting this company and kind of being off on the West Coast, potentially by myself, since there's only one other company somewhat near there. This person is going to say, I'm also interested in the Chesapeake and Ohio. Goes back to green. Alternative, I guess they'll also consider going for that one. Do they want to do that? I'll just go ahead and do that. Let's see. So then now we're at red. Red. They're Baltimore. They might be interested in that one, so they're going to put a marker on that. Yellow, 200 there. So to open that, they would need 4 more shares at a minimum of $70 a share. That's $280, so that's $480. So they have 120, so they could look into something else. That is over there, so they're going to look into also being interested in that. Let's say orange. Orange is, let's just say orange is going to pull the ripcord, as they say, and you say, you know what, I'm not going to bid on it, I'm just going to go ahead and buy this for $20. So there is $20 for that. So that goes to the bank. Now there's an auction for this company between green and yellow. And this is why you would typically put your money there, because I don't remember which company started this. I think yellow was first here, if I recall. So 40, so 45 for yellow, up to 50 for green. So 50, so was yellow willing to bid 55? Yellow's only bidder here, so yellow says, yeah, I'll go 55 for that. Green is going to bow out, so he'll take his marker back, which there would be money here, and they would take their money back. So yellow's going to put in $55, so 20, 40, 45, 50, 55. That goes to the bank, and yellow gets that. Red gets this automatically for $55. Cost is 50, but they had their marker on it for the bid, so that increases it to 55. So 20, 40, 55. Now orange and green are competing for this company. I don't know who was there first. I think it was green. So let's say another thing you could do also is, instead of doing it like I did, you could stack them, so you know who was first, who was second. That's another thing that actually, it's usually what I do, is whoever's first, whoever's second goes, stacks it. Anyway, so 85, 90, is green willing to go 95? Green doesn't have anything, so green says, sure, I'll go 95. There's nothing, no other options for me. Orange. Orange took this. That is over there. 85, 90. He says 95. It's 110. Orange is going to bow out. All right, so that means green will get it for, what did I say, 80, 85, 90, $95. So put in 100, get $5 back. Red gets this, 100 plus the bid, 105, $105. And now yellow pays this, 200 plus the $5 increments of $205 for that goes to yellow. And that would conclude the private auction. And then what would happen next is it would go to a stock round. So I will show you that next. All right, so one thing that I want to mention is the last person to act was player 3, who bought this company here, the main share of this. So because they were last to act, the next person in player order, which would have been player 4, would get the priority deal, meaning they get to act first in the stock market, and that's what priority deal is. Whoever has this gets to go first in a stock round. It doesn't matter who has it for the operating round. So since this player won this share, they have to set the par value for it, which is essentially saying how much are each of these shares going to cost. So I mentioned, if you watch the other overview video, things to consider is how much money you're willing to spend in the private auction round versus how much you want left over for the stock round. So left over is $340. So if player 3 wants to float this company, they already have 2 shares of it, and they have $340 that they can spend to buy up to 4 more shares. So 340 divided by 4 is $85 a share, would be the max that they could set the price at for them to be able to buy the other 4. You know, other people could buy the shares to help that person float it, but if they don't and they need to rely on themselves, they want to make sure they have enough. So we look at what are our par value options. There's $70, $80, and $95. All right, so if they want to be able to float the company, they can't do $95 because they only have enough to spend $85 per share, which means they could either do $70 a share or $80 a share. Right, and so that's a choice that they might make. They might say, well, you know, if I do it at 80, I could float the company and then my stock value is more. If they float it at 70, then that's $280, and that would leave them with $60 left to spend in other ways if they wanted to. So they'll make that call. I'm just going to go ahead and set it at the $80 value. So what would happen is the player would get the charter with these tokens on it. So charter has some information. It kind of shows the phase order, where you store your trains when you buy them, and it has the operating sequence, and it just has information. It's like a player aid for you. Up in the right hand corner, it has these 3 spots, which is where you're going to put these tokens. And these tokens represent stations. These are places trains can leave from or travel to as you place them out on the map, and you'll see how that works. So that means they have 3 leftover tokens. So what do they do with these 3 tokens? Well, one of them will go here to set the par value, which means anyone who buys stock from the IPO, which is this section of the board here, this is your IPO. If you want to buy stock from this section, you only pay whatever the par value is. They're going to put one up here. This is the stock value that's going to fluctuate. So if the company value goes down, it's going to go to the left. If it goes up, it's going to go to the right. And there's other things that can happen that can make it go up or down, which I will go over in a little bit. The movement of this one determines how much people pay for the stock if it's in the bank pool. And I went over how stock ends up in the bank pool in my overview, the board video, overviewing how the board works. But it will come up again. And then they have this last token here. And this token would essentially just be used for tracking the revenue of the company, how much money it's making. And I can go over that later, so I'm just going to set this off to the side. So you have 1 token on there. Let me put this here because we are in a stock round. We're in the first stock round. 1 token there, 1 token there, and then the 3 that go on the charter. And so this is going to be the charter for player 3 who owns that company. So that what they did, that would have been done at the end of the private auction round. They would have set the par value, taken the charter, set up everything, and then it would go into the actual stock round. And because player 4 has the priority deal, or if you want to use the crab instead, they will get to act first in a stock round. So I'm going to go over a stock round. So the first thing I want to mention in about a stock round is, in a typical game, you could buy stock from two places, either from the IPO or the bank pool, which I went over in a different video. Now here, all that's available is stocks from the IPO, and most of these companies have not been started, as you could see, because there are presidential certificates available, except for this company, because during the private auction, player number 3 won that company. Now, typically in a stock round, there are certain things you can do. You can sell stock, and then after you sell stock, you can buy stock. However, in the very first stock round, you cannot sell any stock. So this player could not sell their shares of stock into the bank pool. And speaking of that, you can never sell the president's certificate into the bank pool. This can never be in there. You can't. There's things to do where you would turn this in for 2 single shares of stock or trade with other people, and the single shares of stock could go into the bank pool, but you can never have a president's certificate in the bank pool. This person who won the Baltimore and Ohio, they could not sell that into the bank pool. Additionally, on top of that, the Baltimore and Ohio hasn't even begun to be floated yet. No one started the company, so there is no value for it at this point. However, when somebody does start the Baltimore and Ohio, this will pick up some value. So since you can't sell stock, all you're doing in the first round is buying stock. Now, one thing I want to mention is when you do sell stock, when you're allowed to do that, it will cause stock value to go down. For each share that you sell to the bank pool, this will go down 1 spot. And I'll go over that more later. But buying stock does not change the market. If I buy stock, it doesn't increase the stock value. Buying stock is just you buying stock. It doesn't change the market. But selling stock will change the position of this on the market. And that's just something I want to mention. So since player 4 has the priority deal, they're first to act. Now, the only private company they picked up was this one for $20. So that means out of the $600 initial starting cash, they have $580 that they can spend. So if they were going to start a company, and you don't have to start a company, but if you want to, you would have to consider, well, am I going to rely on myself to buy all 60%? And you can only ever own 60% of a company. That should be something that you are aware of. So you can't own 70, 80, 90, or 100% of a company. You can only ever own 60%, and it requires 60% of these stock certificates to be purchased for the company to even begin to operate. So with $580 divided by 6, that's like $96 a share if they wanted to get max value. So what I'm just saying that about is because they could, for $95 a share, pick a company and start it, and at $95 a share, 95 times 6, let me put that into my calculator, times 6 is $570. They have $580. So they could put the stock value, started at 95, meaning it's going to be the most valuable. And one of the things about where your marker is on the stock chart determines turn order for the operating round, for building track. All right, so priority deal marker determines player order for the stock round, but where you are positioned, where your company marker is on the stock track determines player order. Now you might see there are duplicates of numbers. There's a $100 here and there's $100 there. What happens if there's something like this? Both of these companies are valued at $100. Who goes first, since you always go by whichever company is valued the most first? Well, you look at, if they're the same value, you see whoever is furthest to the right always goes first. So this 100 is further to the right than orange. So if this was the case, red would go before orange. So that'd be first, second, third, right? And that's how that would work. So by being able, since you can only start companies at $70, $80, and $95, that player can start a company and par it at 95, saying it's going to be valued at 95. And since they would be the first one to get their company at that, they're going to have first choice of where they want to build. And if there was contested area, let's say that Camden was started and Strasbourg was started, and they both were interested in building into this tile, well, who goes first is going to determine who gets to lay that track. So that would be, well, maybe he wants to go first so that, and if he were to build this spot up, he can make the track go the direction he wanted it to, like maybe curve into his company so that the other person doesn't make it curve into their company. So that's one of the reasons you would consider player order on there. So this person gets to go first. They can pick any one of these companies to start if they so choose. And just for the sake of things, I'm going to have them start the Baltimore and Ohio. So they're going to par that at $95. So they would put one marker at 95 here. They would put a marker at 95 there. So now shares, they're going to get this certificate. They're going to get the charter for the company there. So they get the stock. And so far they've only bought one. They bought the president's share, which is two, the president's certificate, which is 2 shares. So 95 times 2 is 190. So they're going to put in $200 into the bank, and they're going to get $10 back. And when it comes back to them again, they can buy a 3rd share, and then it can come back to them again, they'll buy a 4th, and buy a 5th, and then buy a 6th, and then by that time it would have floated. However, they don't need to actually buy all 6 shares. Why is that? Because this player already has a share. So this player actually only needs to buy 5 of the shares, and maybe not even that, because since this person's already invested in the company, maybe they'll buy some B&O shares and maybe together they'll float the company together. That's something that could happen. All right, so now that player 4 has finished their turn, what happens is you just cycle back around to whoever player number 1 is. In a game, that would be whoever's to your left. And in the private auction, player number 1 purchased for some above $80 because I think this was a bidding war or what have you. But anyway, the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal, which is right here. So that means nobody can build here as long as this is in a player's hands. But once this is sold to a company can build there. And when they build there, they get to immediately put a station. And that's what I was talking about, what these are. These are those stations. So for example, if this company, the Pittsburgh Lake Erie, bought this private into the company, they would be able to, for free, so this one would be on the board already the way it works. So then for free, they would be able to immediately place the next available station that they have, which means they could place that there, and they get to lay whatever track tile that they want. So they lay a piece of track, this would go on top of it, and they can then have a station here. So this company would be able to run a train out of this station or to this station along this side of the board, and then whatever company bought it, they would have, so if it was this company here, then they would be able to have this station as their home station. I'm trying to find where this one is. Oh, over here. So if it was this company, they could have a station there to run a train out of there, and maybe they could run it down along this side of the board, and then they could have another train over here running, and then they could link them up eventually if they wanted to. But anyway, that's what this allows. So since player 1 has this private, they would want to consider building over here. Now, if this private is used, remember they have to pay the cost, the $80 cost, to build onto that mountain. Now that cost comes out of their company's money, and I'll explain that in a little while. So companies that are over here is, for example, they could build Harrisburg, if they wanted to, they could start that company since it connects up here. Or, if they wanted to, they could pick any company they want, though, since this allows them to just build a station there. So that could be an advantage if you want to be on two different spots of the board. Now, something they're going to want to consider is the cost of a train. So like I said, they could use their special ability of the company to build a station here, and they could have a station somewhere else on the board. Let's say they started this company over here. But what they would need is two different trains to run to those stations. So they would need a train that runs out of this station and a train that would run out of this station once it was built, which means they would need to have two different trains. So here's one train and there's another. So to buy two trains into a company, it's going to cost $160 at this point. If they wait a while to do that, trains go up to $180 a train. So it gets more expensive. So that's something they're going to want to consider. So they have $505. So if they were going to depend on themselves to start a company, the highest that they could start a company for is at $80 a share. And once that company is started, this is something I haven't mentioned yet, but once 60% of the company is started, you get 10 times the par value. So once this company, the black one, once 60% of it is sold, or shares are sold, that company is going to get $800. Once the blue company, once 6 of those shares are sold to players, $950 is going to go into the company. So that gives you starting cash, more starting cash. So that's another reason why you would consider which par value you're going to do, not only for this, but also for starting cash, which can affect the trains that you purchase, which can affect you being able to afford to pay these fees on the board here. So this player's got to decide, do they even want to start a company, or do they can, if they wanted to, they could invest in this company or that company up there and take a route as an investor for a while. One of the things, though, if you choose to invest in the first round, what happens is during the first operating round, trains don't typically have a run that they can make, because the way it works is you do your runs and then you buy a train. Well, since nobody has a train at the start, they don't run. And if you don't run, your stock value goes back one space. So if player one wanted to be an investor in one of these companies, to do so in the first round, they're automatically going to be buying shares that will go down in value. But if they wait till the second stock round, after companies have bought trains and can make runs, they could actually buy the stock at a lower price. So while they can start investing in other companies now if they wanted to, if they waited around, they could get invested for cheaper, because every company pretty much loses money in the first round. So that's something else to consider. So if the player started Harrisburg, another thing to think about is the starting tiles. The starting tiles are yellow tiles, city tiles, and they only go in a straight direction. So if they started Harrisburg, they could place a tile like that, which could allow them to connect up to here, but they can't get into this tile. They would need an upgrade in a different phase that allows for another track to come out of here. Or they can build in this direction, but then that cuts them off from here. So that's one thing to think about, is that what kind of tiles are you allowed to place? Another thing is they would have two tokens right next to each other, which isn't necessarily something they might want to do at the beginning, is having two tokens so close to each other. So then they would have to consider, well, where else could we start? They could start here, start this company. One of the things about this, though, is to get into Baltimore, they're going to have to swing around through here, and it's going to cost them $40 to build there. But if they... Right, so if they place this tile, to come out of here into here, it's going to cost $40. To come out of here to build into there, it's going to cost $40. They can't, or they wouldn't want to place it this way, because number one, they can't get into Baltimore. Number two, whoever owns this private company has this section blocked off, so they can't go into there. They can't go into there. This is blocked off. They can't go into there. So they really would have to kind of lay the track to go into these things. So they're going to have to lay here. It's going to cost $40. And then to build out of here is going to cost $40. So that's $40. Another build's $40. That's $80 total. If they par the company for $80 a share, 80 times 10 is 800. So $80 is going to be 10% of their bank. If they use their special power to build this up, that's another $80. That's 20% of their money gone. If they buy 2 trains, right? One to run out of this station, one to run out of this station, that's another round of $80. They've already spent 40% of their money right away. So that's one thing you would have to consider as well. Now, they don't have to do their special ability and not spend that money if they don't want to. I am going to go ahead and actually have this player invest in this company here. So what would happen is they would get this. They're going to set the par value at $80. They would prefer to do it at $95 to get more money since it's going to cost so much in building costs, but they just don't have enough money to float the company themselves, and they don't know that anyone would help. So since they're also doing for $80, this token is going to go below the token that was there. And this is going to show turn order. So as I said, whichever is the most valuable goes first. So blue will go first. But here, they're on the same spot. So you'll do whoever's top, then you'll do whoever's bottom. They're going to have a token here and a token here. Now here's something I didn't even think about. Maybe they don't want to start this company because they only have 2 station tokens. So if they place 1 station token here, right, they build up here and they build their hex and they put their station token here. If they use their special ability to build this one up, this station token is going to go there, and then this company has no more station tokens. They can't put any more out. Why does that matter? Well, trains can't run through another company's station. So if they come to somebody else, let's say here, some company builds in Hagerstown or some company builds in Harrisburg, once that company puts their station token there, trains can't run through it, and it's going to block them out. So since he has a special ability to actually build one over here, but only 2 station tokens, they may not want to do this. Or, like I said before, maybe they won't even use the special power. Maybe they will just use it to collect revenue. Every round they're going to get $15, and as I said before, they could sell this to a company for up to $160. So maybe they're just going to look at this as, this is just going to be cash for me, and I'm really not even going to worry about the special ability that it has. But I'm still going to have them start this just because, so we're going to see what happens. So anyway, so then those tokens will go there. They are buying the president's share, so that is 2 shares of this. So president's certificate, they're going to get that. And since it's 2 shares at $80 a share, they're going to take $160. So I'm going to take $200 and put it in the bank. And they're going to get $40 back. And next it's going to go to player 2's turn. So now that it's player 2's turn, they have $440. So $440 divided by 673. All right, so they could start their own company if they wanted to, but the most that they would be able to do is par it at $70, which means if they floated their own company, they would get $700 into the treasury. Right? That's the least amount of money you're going to have to play around. So things they might want to consider is maybe they don't want to start a company around a lot of areas where you have to pay mountain costs to build. So companies that are available still is up here. This company here is available. Camden down here is available. Down here at the bottom is available. The Penn is available. And down here, this company is available as well. So this company up here doesn't have really building costs around it. However, it's kind of stuck in this spot where that since this person, the private company they have is the Chesapeake in Ohio, which is, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. The Baltimore and Ohio. They have the Baltimore and Ohio private, which actually got them the share, so that doesn't do anything. But there's special abilities for the Baltimore and this one place railroad, which is allowing them to build in this section. So if they started this company, they don't have access to whoever's going to place this tile. It's blocked off to whoever owns that. They don't have access here. So really, they can't get into these two spots. And remember, the tile that they have, it only goes straight. So if they laid it, they can't really get in. You can't run off board. So they can't really get into this part of the city yet until this tile's upgraded with a piece that lets them go in here. So if they curved it like this, they could put their city there and they'd be able to run to this small city. But that's it, because they can't extend their track because they can't build into here and they can't build into here. So that wouldn't be very useful to them. So they could consider Camden down here, but again, it has building costs if they're going to go this way. Not so much building costs if they were going to go this way. But there's special ability companies over here. So maybe what they want to do is start the pen up here, which actually comes with 4 tokens. Maybe this is a company that player 1 should have started. I don't know. Like I said, if they token here and token here, it just seemed like a waste of 2 tokens in close proximity to each other. But they have a lot to spare, so it could have been done. But they didn't choose that. But player 2, since they have this, they could start this one, and they have the ability to do the free track lays here, which gets them very close to getting into Baltimore, which is a $30 city. I think they're going to choose to start the pen. Now, the bad side about this is, as I said, once it's floated, they're only going to have $700 in the company. And to take advantage of laying these tokens, they're going to have their home one, but then the next one costs $40. The next one's $60 for a total of $100. The next one $80 for a total of $180. $180 is a lot of money out of a company with only $700 in it. Now there's ways to get money into the company, and that's something that they're going to probably have to consider doing. But anyway, they're going to do that. So they're going to start the pen at $70 a share. They're going to go here, which means they're going to go last in operating order because they have the least value. And then this one just goes on the money tracker. And this company charter will go to player number 2. They'll take the president's share. So they're going to owe, it's 2 shares. So 70 times 2 is $140. So this is going to go to this player. I'm going to spend $140 for those shares. And that's going to end their turn. And now it's going to go to player 3. Now, typically what most likely would happen is player 3 would buy another share in their company so that they could float it. And then player 4 would buy another one in their company. And then player 1 would buy another in their company. And then 2 in their company. And you just kind of go around and do that and kind of build up until the company's floated. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do it on camera, but that's what's going to happen. But keep in mind, this company here doesn't need to buy 4 more shares. 1, 2, that's 2 out of the 6 they need. But remember, this person has one, so they actually only need to buy 3 more shares. And of course, anybody else could buy into it if they wanted to. For example, this player could if they wanted to. Okay, one thing I want to mention and go over now is the companies have been buying their stocks. And this company here, the black company, just bought their 6th share. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They now have 60% of the shares bought. And so that means they're going to float. The company's going to be able to operate. So we look at what the cost of the black company was. And it's $80 a share. So that means they're going to get $800, which I've set aside here. And that's going to go into the treasury because you make 10 times whatever your par value is. So they parred for 80. 80 times 10 is 800. The company gets $800. Next, we're going to go down here. Now, actually, what happened earlier is this company bought, so they have 1, 2, 3, 4. They bought their 5th share, and then this company bought their 5th share there. They bought their 5th share there, and then they bought their 6th share for their company, and now it comes back to this company to act. But what actually happened is when they bought their 5th share, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, remember, another person had a share of it. So actually, when they bought their 5th share, their 5 plus this 1, it means 60% of the company's stock has been bought up. At that moment, the company floats, and it's going to get 10 times their par value. B&O parred at $95 a share. So they're going to get $950, and that's going to go in their company treasury. And notice there's the player cash and the company cash. This player has spent all their cash, so there's just the company cash. Here there's the player cash. This company hasn't floated yet, but you want to make sure you keep your player cash separate from the company cash. You don't ever mix those things up, and you've got to make sure you keep them separate. So it's gone around and it's come back to this player again, and they still have $105 to spend. Now, I had mentioned earlier that in the first round, trains don't run, and so that means all companies don't have a train to run. So it means all the companies in the first round are going to go back and lose value. And so I had mentioned, well, why buy stock now when you could buy it later for the cheaper price? But the one thing I didn't mention that I should have mentioned is you only buy at this price if there are shares in the bank pool. All right. And there are no shares in the bank pool at this time, and maybe there won't be. So if there aren't going to be shares in the bank pool, you don't know if there are going to be, then maybe you continue buying from the IPO. So for example, the Baltimore and Ohio player has, after floating, $105 left. They could buy stock in any other company they want. And I mentioned a person can only own 60% of their own company. And while 60% of the B&O shares are out there, this player doesn't have 60%. They only have 50% because there's another share here. So if they wanted to, they could max out their ownership by buying another share of the B&O. Or they could diversify. They could buy a share of another company if they want to, but maybe they don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they don't know how they're going to lay their track. So they could also just pass and sit on their money if they wanted to. So those are the options that you have. And now I got to make a decision if the B&O is going to buy a share of its own, diversify, or pass, and just hold on to this money and see what happens. One thing that is going to happen is when we get to the operating round, they're going to pick up $5 more, so they'll actually have $110 if they don't spend money now, but that's still not going to allow them to buy any more than one share because the cheapest is $70. But that's one of the things you have to think about and consider. All right, so every company has floated now. I just finished this player's turn and they floated their company. So now every company has floated. And the decision I made about B&O is I had them buy another share of their own because I figured, if they buy a share of somebody else's company, then they're helping that company float. And they're allowing that other player to not have to buy a share of their own company. And they're allowing that player to diversify and have, more diversity. And so I decided, I didn't want that to happen yet. So they bought another one of their shares. So this person's the last player to act. So now it goes to this person. This person passes because they have no money. There's nothing they can do. So then it goes to player 4. They only have $10. They pass. Goes to player 1. They have $25. They can't buy any shares with $25. They pass. It goes to player 2. They only have $20. They can't do anything with $20. Remember, you're not allowed to sell stock in the first round. There's nothing else they can do. They pass. Everybody has passed in a row. This was the last player to pass, meaning priority deal is going to sit with this player. Meaning in the next stock round, they're going to act first. Now, when Baltimore and Ohio had that choice to make, they could have passed then and then let this company finish buying their share and then not be able to do anything else, and then let this company buy a share and not be able to do anything else, and then this person would have passed, and then they could have acted right then, and then what that would have done is then it would have gone to here to pass, here to pass, here to pass, here to pass, and priority deal would have been with player 1. And what that would have meant is in the stock round, they would have acted first, they would have acted second, they would have acted third, and they would have acted fourth. But because they bought earlier and didn't pass, it came about where now player 3 is going to act first, meaning player 4 is going to act second. Now that may seem insignificant at this moment, but as you play the game, because people can do different things in a stock market that can hurt you, when you act in a stock market, it's going to matter. So when you pass, it's going to determine or influence when you're able to act in the next round, whether you're acting early or late. And that's going to matter as you get more familiar with the game and see how it works. But that's basically going to be the end of stock round 1, and it's now going to go into operating round number 1.